As I sit on the shoulder of the road, I notice that the sun is beginning to set, and that the wind and snow are causing blizzard conditions. My car is out of gas, and I am royally stuck. My phone battery is dead, and I realize that I'm truly screwed. Almost obscured by the storm, I notice a house off in the trees. Smoke is rising from the chimney, and soft lamplight is glowing from the windows. I pray that they will let me come out of the storm so that I can call for help. Stepping out of the car, the wind catches the door and pulls it out of my hand. The air is frigid, and I'm lucky that the house is so near. I begin my frozen journey to their front door. Knocking on the door, I'm thrilled when a woman about my age answers. Shivering, I tell her my plight. Without speaking, she looks beyond me and quickly ushers me in. You were so lucky that there is still some light out, or I would not have let you in. Here, take off your coat and sit by the fire and warm up. As I do so, she says her name. She tells me that her name is Sarah. Sarah, I am so grateful that you have let me in. I was so worried that I was going to freeze out there. She looks me in the eye and tells me that there are worse ways to die. After warming up, I ask her if I can use her phone. She tells me that none of the phones are working due to the storm and that the electricity is out as well. Looking about the room, I see that all the light is coming from gas and battery lanterns. I began to hear slamming sounds coming from the back of the house. Sarah explains that her husband is closing all the windows and shutters and locking them from the inside. I tell her that I have never seen anyone do this before, but she reassures me that it really helps to protect the windows from falling tree branches laden with ice. Sarah's husband enters the room and throws a questioning look in my direction. Before I can respond, Sarah explains my situation and reassures her husband that it's okay because the sun has not set. I am puzzled as to see his features relax, but he said nothing. He welcomes me inside and then goes about securing the remaining windows. After stocking the stove, Sarah's husband finally sits and rests. He tells me that his name is Steve, and that the storm is one of the worst that he has ever experienced. He said that it was providential for me that he and Sarah were home, and that there weren't any other homes for several miles. He comments that the state of Maine can be a lonely place when driving off the beaten path. Sarah enters the room holding a tray with 3 steaming mugs of soup. Without apology, my stomach makes known of its hunger. We all laugh and begin to enjoy the comfort of health and home. After enjoying the hospitality, I thank them and ask if there was any way that I would be able to get help. They tell me that it would be impossible and that I should just sit back and wait until morning. I apologize for being such a nuisance, but they tell me not to think anything of it. I offer to help clean up the dishes. Working at the kitchen sink, Sarah and I begin to tell a little about ourselves. Though the cracks of the kitchen window shutters, I notice that the night has fallen and mentioned it to Sarah. After a sharp intake of breath, Sarah looks away. I ask her what was wrong, but she only shakes her head. Suddenly, we hear a knock at the back door. Sarah looks stricken and calls to her husband. Steve runs into the kitchen and tells us to go upstairs. The knocking begins again, louder and more insistent. I'm confused as Sarah begins to cry. Steve gently takes her by the arm and leads her up the stairs and asks me to follow. I ask, "Aren't you going to answer the door? Someone else is stuck out in that storm." Steve just shakes his head. No. I'm incredulous, knowing the blizzard is deadly. You can't just leave them out there. Steve again shakes his head no. I don't know what else to do, so I follow Sarah upstairs to a room. The room is full of shadows, lit by only a lantern. Steve enters behind us, bolts the door, and hangs a cross on a nail near the doorknob. I'm now feeling more frigid as more knocking is heard from downstairs. It sounds as if it was in the back door, the front door, the walls, the windows. Sarah continues softly to cry, and I turn to Steve and demand to know what's happening. He tells me to sit down because I wouldn't believe what he's about to tell me. He asks if I had seen any passing cars when I had been out on the road. I think back and realize that I hadn't seen a single car or truck during the last 2 hours that I had been driving. I tell Steve that it could be easily explained because of the storm. Kelly, you didn't see anyone because there aren't many of us left. And those of us that are, make sure to be safe inside before the sun sets. I look at him with uncomprehending eyes. What are you saying? I don't understand. What are you trying to tell me? Suddenly, we hear a knocking at the window, 2 stories up. Sarah stifles a scream as Steve grabs the cross and heads towards the window. Kelly, come here. Look and you will understand. Peeking through the shutters into the night and swirling snow, I see a figure of a woman, blood-soaked front and cold, empty eyes. She appears to float in mid-air. Seeing me, I hear her call to me, begging to be let in. Her lips curl back to reveal an unholy, unnatural, sharpened scissors. I shrink back in horror. Oh my God, what is happening? Steve, what is happening? I cannot take in what I have seen, and yet somewhere in the deepest recesses of my mind, I know exactly what I'm seeing. Sitting on the bed, Sarah had stopped crying. Reaching out to Steve, she takes his hand and tells me that those things have taken their 6-year-old son. She says that she cannot bear the thought of him becoming one of them, an evil creature of the night, feeding on the blood of others. Steve explains that he and Sarah will wait until their son returns and that they will lay him to rest, if they can find the strength to do what needs to be done. The knocking at the window and doors continue, shaking with fear. I ask if we're safe. Steve replies that we are, as long as we do not let them in. Vampires must be invited in. The night is so long, and sleep will not come. Neither Steve nor Sarah have any idea when or how this nightmare began. All they know is that weeks ago, people from their tiny town began disappearing, only to return in the darkness of night, seeking blood. During the daylight hours, the remaining neighbors gathered and searched the homes to find hiding creatures to destroy them. It was one night, a week ago, that their son, Mark had heard his little friend call out to him, as both Steve and Sarah slept. Opening the door, Mark followed his friend into the night. It wasn't until daylight that hapless parents found the beloved child was missing. Mommy, I'm cold. I'm scared. A little boy is crying. Sarah suddenly sits upright. It's Mark, Steve. Let him in. Let him in. It's him. I know he's okay. I can hear it in his voice. Oh God, let him in. Steve grabs her before she is able to pull open the bedroom door. Sarah, think. We cannot let him in. It's not him. You have to remember that. It's not him. Steve makes Sarah sit down once again and asks if I would be willing to help him do what has to be done. I'm numb with fear, but I shake my head yes. Steve asks me to hold on to the cross as he wields a wooden stake and hammer. Together, we head downstairs as Sarah buries her face into a pillow, sobbing. The voice of the creature is clearer the closer we get to the door. Tears fall freely from Steve's eyes. He asks me to hold the cross out in front of us as he slowly opens the door. It stands on the snow-covered porch, barefoot in blood-soaked pajamas. He's so small. His eyes remain downcast as I thrust the cross near his face. He refuses to look up. His little lips are pouted as if he has been sobbing. I gasp as I see his little arms rise as if in need of a hug. Steve falters as the child thing says, "Daddy." Before Steve can position himself to strike, the creature opens its fangled maw and pushes me aside as it leaps onto him, tearing at his throat. Biting deep, it makes horrible sucking sounds. Witnessing such horror, I grab the tool from Steve's hand and pound the stake through the child's back and into its heart. From the stairs, Sarah sees what happened and emits a scream that is born from terror and despair so deep no words could be found. She rushes to her child and rocks his lifeless body. Steve's cartoroid has been savaged, and he's beyond help. Knowing what I have to do, I grab the fireplace poker and plunge it through his heart. I gently take Sarah by the hand and lead her away. Morning light finds that the storm has ended. In shock, unblinking and silent, follows me to her own car. Because of the snow, it's impossible to get to the main road. We head back up into the house. With Sarah in shock, I realize that I am truly alone without help. The power is still out and the phone is still dead. I'm sickened as I begin the grisly task of dragging the bodies of Steve and the child to the outside. There's nothing more I can do but pray for help to arrive. All that is left for us to do is wait. Wait until the night comes again.